Bobby Sevenich. Welcome to the Inqua podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
I think
Merry
I've
Christmas.
just
Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas. I think I've just now realized I don't even know if I'm saying your last name wrong, and we've been friends for years.
Oh, it's even among my, very close family members. There's debate on how it's pronounced, but we like to say Sevenich.
Sevenich.
Hard, yeah. With hard.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell everybody we know and make sure they're saying it right. Bobby Sevenich.
But any iteration, bastardization of that will work too.
Yep. Now, we've known each other a couple years. Let's just break it down, though, for everyone who doesn't know you. You grew up in Chicago, right?
I actually grew up in the Twin Cities, which isn't too far from Chicago. It's I don't want to say an inferior Chicago, just right around the corner, a little further north.
And did you grow up watching lots of movies or TV?
Yes, very much. Movies, especially. I think, I came of age at a time when physical media was attainable. You could select films to rent, to add to your collection. So for me, it was a fun venture into, entertainment and creativity. And
Do you feel like it was like an escapism or just exploring new worlds, or was it just a fun way to spend every Friday night?
For me, it was never escape. I think if anything, it was connectivity. So for me, it was education. I think it was culture. I think it was, movies. There are more people who are, film literate than they are, literate in literature or other forms of art, 18th century Baroque art. I guess that wouldn't make it Baroque, would it? In any case, for me, it was fun to connect with people and talk about movies and find people who had seen movies I enjoyed to show people and curate movies for people was kind of like a love language of mine. So for me, there's nothing better, which is funny now. I like to go to the movie theaters alone since the pandemic. But as a kid, and growing up, I loved watching movies with people, especially ones I had seen, could, share with people.
I totally get that. I think it's the same love language for me, and like the anticipation and excitement of showing a friend your favorite movie or something you just discovered. It was like nothing else, right?
Oh, it's the stuff of, miracles. It's that connection. It's sharing something bigger than yourself. It's, connecting on ideas. And I don't know. I just think there's a real magic to cinema.
Now, did your parents love movies? Were they kind of helping, guiding you in some ways or showing you their favorite things, or is it something you more developed on your own?
I would say to the extent that I've arrived at today, it's been a self-guided journey. But, my mom enjoyed movies. My dad had seen movies as anyone of his generation had. So he loved Star Wars and he loved, dinosaurs and aliens and action. And, for him, it was fun. He introduced kind of those big genre movies, those cultural moments. And so for us, it was a way to connect. And then, script flipped, and now I show him movies and both my parents. So anyway.
Always fun to get to that point. Yeah. Introducing them to something that's on the cutting edge after they showed you so much.
Yeah, exactly. It's nice.
What were some of the movies you loved growing up?
Well, the movie that mattered most was Mary Poppins. My first love. My only love. Yeah. It just, for me, and I think it was a gateway drug into Disney. And, starting there, really loving all of those animated movies. That universe evolved. And so it's gone in many, many different directions from there.
Yeah. When's the last time you've watched the original Mary Poppins?
Oh, gosh. It's probably been a couple of years. I used to watch it annually. As a kid, I'd watch it every day, but that was when it was pre-verbal, I was still crawling. But yeah, so yeah, I get to revisit it often enough.
And maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't, but I feel like it's one of those ones that really holds up well. Even with some of the funny special effect or whatever, it still just feels like dipping a toe in a magical land and something
Oh yeah,
completely
the
different.
score, the Julie Andrews, like what an
Yeah.
arrival. And it's just yeah, I think it holds up extremely well. What about you? What's that one real childhood movie that you hold on to?
I at an early age took to more adult movies. I mean, I guess if we're talking like a real cartoon or childhood one, The Land Before Time is something I
Oh
watched
sure.
over and over and over again. Just loved that one.
What an introduction to tragedy and law.
Yeah, and I was talking with someone about it the other day, and I haven't watched it in years, so I think I'm going to revisit it because I just remember, and maybe that's what it was. It introduced some heftier themes, but soon after, I was on a rotation of Back to the Future, Apollo 13, Star Wars, and Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah, I loved all those. I just rewatched the first two Back to the Futures. The second one is I have a lot of feelings, but the first one is a classic. I love it.
Do you like the third one?
I do. I haven't rewatched that one yet. I didn't love westerns until recently, so as a kid, to me, it was kind of a.
It was boring. It was dusty, right?
It was dusty. It was dry. I didn't understand the genre, frankly.
Yep.
So for me, it just wasn't. The in jokes weren't there, and I was like, well, why don't I just watch the other two Back to the Futures?
Yeah, I definitely like the third one more
But the
now.
romance with Doc is so sweet.
Yeah, it's so great.
Yeah.
Well, so you took your film education. What was the movie that kind of opened your eyes to where you kind of finally snapped and you were like, oh no, I love movies. This is part of my personality and everything else.
Oh, gosh, it was a very, very early age. I can't even remember a time when it wasn't kind of part of personality, unfortunately. But I'd like to say it's taken a more nuanced role in my life now. But no, I think it was Mary Poppins. I think there are all those milestone movies, everything from Hitchcock to Ingmar Bergman to David Lynch. It just kind of snowballed from there.
Now, when you went off to school, did you study film, or is it always just kind of a habit and a hobby?
Well, in undergrad, I studied theater and I was pre-med and found ways to integrate film. But it wasn't something I ever thought I would. I mean, I wanted to be a doctor. But
Yeah.
then I actually went to grad school, which brought me out to LA in film and critical studies. So it was great because I had the opportunity to, study film and then teach it at a university level, which was a real blessing. So, and it brought me to Los Angeles.
And we're happier for it.
Well, you and I both, man.
I was going to say, we had Eleanor on last week. You and Eleanor, were you in the same program, or
We
did you?
were. We met,
That's right.
we met the first day we both moved to Los Angeles. So
And nothing's been the same since.
it's just been a roller coaster and a
Now,
real delight.
as far as working in film, I know you worked at Paramount for a while. Is that your only film experience in the industry?
I worked I worked for like a marketing media group before Paramount. And then I worked at an agency prior to Paramount. And now I work for a toy company. So yeah, that was my only real experience in the industry, was at Paramount.
And how did you like it, or how did it affect your love of movies?
Oh, I loved it. I think for me, it was like I got as close as I think I wanted to be to the very, part of film, which was like I worked at a movie studio. It was a dream, but it was also not the kind of work I wanted to do. It wasn't they weren't the kind of people I wanted to be around.
Yeah.
It wasn't the kind of, long-term energy. And it's not that the dream faded. It's just like, oh, well, what does it mean to, you can love something and not do it every day. Like to say it enhances and supplements and, sneaks its way into multiple facets of this life.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, I think like Eleanor talked about last week, you don't have to work, like you just said, don't have to work in something to love it. You don't have to love something to work in it. And I love that you're still entertaining people, though. Your toy company still kind of doing the same thing, bringing life and light and joy
there's real overlap too, because we make toys based on entertainment properties, which are movies. So it's still relevant. It's just it plays a different role. So
Yeah, one of the many different avenues.
yeah.
Well, as it is December and we're nearing Christmas, I gave you not an assignment, but our topic for today is 5 movies that are Christmas or holiday or December or just generally winter movies. And you sent back the list, and as we talked about before, I didn't recognize most of these movies. So I'm excited to learn about the movies, what made you love them, what stuck out about them, and why you love watching the season. So let's kick it off with whatever your first movie is.
Well, it's too bad you're turning the mic over to me because your voice is just so got such a great radio voice. It's soothing. I guess it's more a podcast voice, not a radio voice. But I have a question for you actually.
Yeah.
What did you when you gave me this opportunity and said pick 5 movies, what kind of movies did you think I'd pick?
I honestly know you well enough. I was hoping for something different. I was like, Bobby's gonna have something I've never heard of, or just you're so well spoken. You go see lots of movies. I was like, it's not just going to be Elf, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Grinch, Frosty, and Jack Frost. So I was hoping for something different because I'm going to have a couple people on as part of these episodes on Christmas movies, and I think some will maybe fit more of the ABC Family holiday calendar,
which has a place.
Which has a place, and honestly, sometimes there's nothing comfier than watching The Grinch. But yeah, I was just hoping
for...
Well,
I do have an honorable mention that fits that one that I was on the list of 5. Believe me, when you gave me this assignment, it gave me the greatest joy this week, just as something light and fun to think about. I've had a lot of fun thinking about this. So there was one that I held on to for a while, but it fell off at the end. So...
And we'll talk about it at the end because I want to know why it fell off, and I also love it, so it's going to be on our list for this week.
Great, a surprise, surprise.
Yep. Well, let's kick it off with the first one then. The Thin Man from The Thin Man, which came out in 1934.
It did. So the theme of these, I guess, when you asked me to pick Christmas movies or holiday movies, there are so many movies that are part of our vernacular now, and they both inform Christmas, and they almost create the Christmas culture that we live in today. These aren't necessarily those kinds of movies. This is a list of movies that has Christmas as a through line, as a climax, as a mood, as a energy, a setting, not necessarily the topic of the movie. It's not about a dad trying to get the number 1 toy for his kid for the holidays, or it's not about a family, reuniting necessarily because of Christmas or Santa or what have you. These are mood pieces, if you will.
Yeah.
So the first one, Thin Man, it's a movie that I think few people have seen, that so many elements of it are woven through popular culture even today. So it's from 1934. It's a murder mystery comedy, really. Yeah, it was a huge hit when it came out. It's William Powell, Myrna Loy, and it's a husband and wife. It's a detective and his heiress wife, and their names are Nick and Nora, which even the movie fit the name of it. Nick and Nora's Ultimate Playlist.
Infinite Playlist,
yeah. That's a nod to this, but it's essentially this really delightful, kind of silly and dark. I guess the topic isn't the plot is dark, but not the way it plays out. Basically, Nick and Nora are visiting New York City for the holidays, and a murder occurs. And Nick is retired as a private detective, but he gets pulled back into it. And so, it's him solving this murder, really, but it doesn't take the foreground. If anything, it's just kind of a task that they need to complete while the two of them, dine with friends. They're copious drinkers. They've got this, banter that's all about drinking, and, it's just a very quick-witted, very lovely romance, and it, it's it's set amid the New York kind of Christmas that we have come to, you know, idolize, or at least romanticize, if you will. So it's, they're always going to Christmas parties. They're, at the department stores. They're coming in and out with presents. Even the guests at dinner parties are, trying to, shoot the decorations with air guns. And it's it's got this energy that is really fun about Christmas, and especially the, Miracle on 34th Street, New York, 1930s, 40s, image that we remember. So it's just this really lovely movie, and it's super funny, and it's just goofy. It's just really goofy. So yeah, The Thin Man. You've never heard of this one?
Never heard of it.
Okay.
And also the way you described it just sounds great. I mean, a little, background plot, and I do like what you've just described of a movie where the city becomes a character and it's really living and vibrant and pays off some cliches or expectations, but also leaves you feeling happy about what you're watching.
Yeah, it's just a funny contrast because the movie is a murder mystery. That's the plot. But the tone is just it's so light, and it has a nice lift when you enter the holiday season. So it's one of those movies that it's easy to throw on and watch, while you're doing other things. It's easy to sit down and watch it when you're tired, because it's a feast. It's just a feast of, cheeky humor. And yeah, no, I love it.
Did you see How They Run, which came out last year? Sam Rockwell, Saoirse Ronan?
No, I didn't. I remember it coming out though. Was it good?
It was good, and it reminds me a little bit what you're talking about here, of murder mystery, but still cheeky and fun. And that one, at least, was a movie about the mousetrap play, Agatha Christie's play in London.
Oh, yeah. I remember hearing about it.
But it's not like it's gone as a genre, but I do agree that unless you're talking about Knives Out, which has come out recently, which is a little different, we don't have as much of these dramatic comedies that aren't just strictly a Judd Apatow comedy, but also aren't, they have some substance and some coziness to them while having a darker theme behind it.
Yeah, and I think we like stories that have meat to them, right? But there are so many different ways that we can tell those stories. And I think, what you're describing with a famous Agatha Christie story, because even her tone is so, she's got kind of a tongue-in-cheek, real playful energy about her when she writes about murder. So, it's a genre on its own. It's really fun to tap into.
Yep. And how did you first come across this movie? Is it something you found on TV one day on reruns? Is it something you rented as a DVD?
It was a rental as a DVD because I remember Warner Brothers put out like The Thin Man. There are so many sequels. I think there are like 5 or 6 sequels.
Oh, wow.
And it's all, I mean, the majority of them, if not all of them, are with William Powell and Myrna Loy.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just seeing this and reading up on it because I love the AFI lists and I knew the Academy Award history by heart. So I was like, oh, yeah, this was up for 4 Oscars, Best Picture. And it's on, the list of greatest comedies and greatest nominated movies for the top 100. So for me, it was like one of those early classic essentials that I wanted to watch. And it wasn't categorized as a Christmas movie initially. Yeah. So for me, watching it over the years, it's nice to be reminded of that Christmas spirit.
Yeah, it becomes part of your Christmas canon, if you will.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's definitely one to check out if you like old Hollywood comedies. Just real good Hollywood comedies. They don't make them like they used to.
They sure don't. That post-prohibition alcoholic induced comedy was just something different. It was something fun.
It was.
Let's move on.
There. More restrictions in our
restrict us so we have more fun.
exactly. Exactly.
Well, let's
Um,
move on to the second one.
yeah, Lion in Winter. So this was a 1968 adaptation of a play.
Okay.
And the play didn't do particularly well, but it's a historical costume drama set at Christmas 1183. And it's about Henry II of England and his wife Eleanor of Aquitaine and their three sons. And it is a Game of Thrones during the Christmas season. So
Ooh.
because its source material is a play, it has this chamber drama quality to it, but it takes place in one of the castles. I forget which one, but essentially there's the family's divided. Henry is trying to get his future son with his new lover. He wants that boy to be the heir to his throne, King John. And his estranged wife, he's locked up in prison, or I forget what she did, but he temporarily releases her from prison, and she's escorted home to England for the holidays. So there's kind of this, if you think about a Christmas movie trope, so much of what we've seen in the past is like a family reuniting or someone coming home for Christmas or being able to get home, or there's some tension there.
Yeah.
And this is one of the epics of that saga. So anyway, it's a battle between this king and this queen, played by Peter O'Toole.
Oh, great.
Classic. Yeah. And, Lawrence of Arabia. And then Katharine Hepburn. She won her third Oscar for this, tied with Barbara Streisand. But it's beautifully dressed. The sets are great. The costumes are, real beautiful. They're beautiful. There's this heavy, dramatic score by John Barry, who did the James Bond theme, but it uses real harsh choral elements. And so Christmas here, it's not like the signs of Christmas back in 1183 were that, consistent with what they are today, the icons or whatever.
Yeah.
So, you got a tree, you got some other celebratory things, but here Christmas really plays an interesting role in the throwaway lines. They're real cheeky banter, the way they fight each other. There's, I forget, Henry says at one point, he says, "What should we hang, the holly or each other?" It's like, and of course, it's a better delivery. And Eleanor of Aquitaine at one point walks into a room. She's like, "Wow, no one is caroling. It might as well be Lent." And so it's just, it has this cadence of being reminded why and when these people are together. And, to some extent, they're trying to keep their knives, put their knives away for this holiday season. But of course, it erupts in violence and drama, and it's just beautifully acted, beautifully staged. It's really riveting. It's one I love watching it. There are scenes from it that are just, the dialogue is just dynamite, and it's harsh and it's elegant, and it's just this wonderful medieval melodrama. And set during Christmas.
You had me at Game of Thrones Christmas. Then you had Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn.
Remember what you're working with. It's 1968. The budget. It's based on a play, not a continuing series of fantasy novels. But it has the same, it's the same structure. It's the same drama.
I hope one day in your apartment or home you have a nice cursive script. Who do we hang? Or what do we hang? The holly or...
Who do we hang? Or what do we hang? The holly or each other.
That's just so great.
Yeah, and I truly think Katharine Hepburn is maybe the best actor, certainly one of the greatest actors of all time. I think it's her greatest performance next to Long Day's Journey tonight. She's devastating. She's hilarious. You watch this movie and you're reminded why she was for the time she was alive, the #1 actor in the world.
Wow, that's a bold claim, and all the more reason to watch it then.
I think so. I'm biased.
Yeah, Lion in Winter,
Lion in
1968.
Winter. Yeah. Fanny and Alexander, the next one. Have you seen Fanny and Alexander by
No,
Ingmar
I have
Bergman?
not.
1983. So Ingmar Bergman, in my opinion, he's the greatest Swedish director. He is concerned about humanity and spirituality and the presence of God and the absence of God and theater and culture. And he started making movies, in the 50s. He made Seventh Seal and Persona in the 60s. And Fanny and Alexander it was supposed to be kind of his magnum opus, the last big movie. It was a 3-hour movie in theaters.
Wow.
It was a 5-hour cut for Swedish television, but it's this Victorian family tragicomedy or epic. And it's seen through the eyes of two little kids, Fanny and Alexander. And it starts with the biggest Christmas celebration, ever staged out in cinema. It's like an hour long. The movie is framed by Christmas. It takes place over a year, and it looks at this huge family over the course of a year. And it starts on Christmas and it ends on Christmas the next year. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the greatest Christmas movie ever made. It captures what Christmas is. It's magical realism. It looks at the joys of Christmas and, also everything outside of Christmas that makes Christmas such a celebration. It looks at terror and, childhood and ghosts, and it has elements of Shakespeare. It references Hamlet and Dickens. It deals with this mysticism and myth telling and myth making, and it's really sensational. It won 4 Oscars in '83, including foreign language film. It was up for director and writer. It's always on the list of the greatest international cinema, of international cinema, but it's rich with drama, comedy, beauty, the sets, the costumes. It's just high quality, it's high cinema. It's just wonderful. And it's Christmas. I mean, it is a nativity play. It is a huge family banquet. It is decorating trees. It is, the mischief of getting family together. It's just fantastic. And, I think there's a way to enjoy it as an adult. And because it looks at childhood and, what happens at childhood and the loss of innocence. And I think contrasting the children experiencing the world, they're being introduced to this melancholy and this sadness. And I think what it uses Christmas as is the anchor of life's joy, because outside of that, anything can happen, and the human spirit is complicated. Life is long and full of magic, for lack of a better word. So, Fanny and Alexander, it's a long one, and there's reasons to watch the 3-hour cut and the 5-hour cut. So, but it's one I love to have on if I'm doing laundry or ironing or making dinner or whatever. It sets the tone. It is about Christmas. It elevates Christmas. So I love Fanny and Alexander. I think it's the greatest Christmas movie of all time.
I mean, first off, it's beautiful to hear you explain it in such detail and passion. But second off,
You mean spitballing just for vomit?
No. I think when we think of Christmas movies, at least in the last 20, 30 years, I can't think of a single one that's been in Oscar contention or even an Oscar movie that features Christmas in any big way. At least not for, the bigger categories. So for it to be
it wasn't marketed as a Christmas movie. I think that's important but if you Google like 50 greatest Christmas movies from, I'm sure the New Yorker would list it as a great Christmas, but it's not going to be, in the Walmart, 5.99 Christmas, and it's in Swedish. So you're already alienating audiences, mass audiences, but it really does foreground Christmas. But again, this was 83. We weren't born then. I don't think we were.
No, a little before our time. A little before our time. Now I have to know.
Aren't you Scandinavian? Your last name, my goodness.
I'm Norwegian. Yeah, so them and the Swedes don't always get along, but
they don't.
We're trying to do better these days.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to bring up such content.
I mean, if we're talking about New Year's resolutions 2024, I want to watch Ingmar Bergman films. It's been on my list, all the film pages I follow.
So you've heard of him?
I've heard of him. I know I've seen so many stills. I follow a lot of those Instagram pages that do, like a color wheel for every shot or showing you the different light as well as just showing you stills. And everything he's done, I'm like, okay, I need to watch this. It's artistic.
He's my favorite director. I mean, I think Hitchcock has a place in that conversation. I think there's a handful of people, but in terms of the master of cinema, at least the stories and the way and the beauty and the themes that I care about or that resonate with me, it's Ingmar Bergman, man.
Well, I'm gonna have to have you back on after I've watched a few, but maybe I'll.
What are you gonna start with?
Maybe I'll start with Fanny Alexander this Christmas.
No,
that'll be the way I kick it off.
No. Well, maybe I don't know. You could, but yeah, there's this really wonderful Criterion collection. Are you familiar with it?
Yes, of course.
Okay, they released this box set of essentially all of his movies. It's missing a couple of key ones, but the way the box set is presented is as a film festival. So it's a film festival presentation, and you're supposed to watch it the way they've curated it, which is meant to introduce and see through one's education of Ingmar Bergman. So if you need good reference points, you could look at that list and just be like, oh, okay, so here's a good guide.
So don't start with the best one.
Well, Fanny and Alexander is not the best one. I would put it as like maybe his 5th best movie. I think it's the greatest Christmas movie, and I love Fanny and Alexander, but it isn't on my top 100. It's cracked top 5 Ingmar Bergman movies. That's how much I love him.
Well, I'll definitely follow up with you because it feels like such new territory for me. I don't know anyone until you who has mentioned him, at least in my close friend circle. So one of those names and things I've been wondering about, and now seeing Fanny Alexander and hearing what you've said, all the more interested to go check out more of his movies.
Anytime you want to talk about Mr. Bergman, I'm happy to. And I want to hear how you progress through his catalog.
Well, let's use the obvious homophone and go straight to Mr. Burton from Bergman. And
there we go.
Batman Returns.
Batman Returns. Have you seen this one?
Yeah, this is still Michael Keaton before it became Val Kilmer, right?
Yeah. I mean, I won't talk about...
This is Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito. Notably Michelle Pfeiffer, who I think gives
amazing
the best performance of her career. And she's had a solid career, but I think she's just sensational as Catwoman. But I think, Mr. Burton was given total control of this production after the huge success of the 89 film.
Yeah.
And it shows, and it's why people are turned off to Batman Returns, but I think it's also why it's lightning in a bottle, this one.
Yep.
Do you like this one?
I like this one. Growing up, my parents didn't love the superhero movies. So I feel like we'd always see it on reruns or, at someone's house or whatever else. I remember seeing more of the George Clooney Batman, which are fun but terrible. I mean, terrible.
But when you're little, I mean, I remember when I was little, Batman was a first love.
Oh, yeah.
Love. I mean, and I remember the Burton ones are really scary. I mean, they're obtuse,
They're
they're
dark.
macabre, they're grotesque, they're kind of even Tim Burton at his kind of weirdest or most obtuse. And yeah, of course, the Joel Schumacher ones are like they're like candy. They're just, especially
Yeah.
for little kids, they're like, wow, this is fun.
Yeah, I think I watched Batman Returns in college. Someone was showing it around Christmas time, and that was the first time I kind of snapped to and was like, "Wait a second, it's good. Not only is it good, but it's fun in how Tim Burton it goes, and really dives into his style." But to your point, I would argue I'm like Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman is one of the better superhero performances, even after all the Marvel stuff. She just does
Oh
such a
yeah,
great job in it,
and the
and she
character
commits.
arc, the character. I think you have. Yeah. Oh, she commits. I mean, I think it took like 8 hours for her to get that suit on every day or whatever.
Oh
But
wow.
it really. Do you think it plays well as a Christmas movie since you've seen it?
I do. I mean, it might not be top of my list, but especially just seeing Gotham like that, and it feels like a nice wintry superhero
Exactly.
flick. Where I think I saw Wonder Woman 1984 a couple years ago, and to me that was like a failure at just trying to throw something in there to be like, oh, we're also Christmas. It
It
didn't
was. I
fit for
didn't see
me.
it. I have to be honest. So they tried
Oh,
that too.
not missing out. It's like at the tail end of the movie, they throw something in that's like, it's Christmas, Christmas vibes. Doesn't work. Where I
Okay.
feel like he wasn't trying to make a Christmas movie. He's making a Batman movie that's made by Tim Burton. But I do think it fits the season a lot better.
Well, and stylistically, there's Christmas, the color palettes, the snow, everything that does to dress a setting. I think Tim Burton really leans into. So, again, throwaway lines about Christmas. Sometimes it's the anchor of a very dramatic monologue, Sometimes it's, a real screw in the plot. There's the tree lighting ceremony. So the set pieces are even, it's like, you know, it's what the characters are doing. They're walking around with Christmas boxes, they're lighting. It gives actors something to do and engage with. And it gives just more energy to the whole world that is created in Gotham, I think. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I think it it kind of it adds a real solemn, minor key forward energy to the Christmas movie canon, I think.
Yeah, to your point, I don't, especially the Christopher Nolan ones. Gotham is just always kind of dark, kind of seedy, either middle of summer or it's wintertime, and nothing else is spoken about. It's just that Tim Burton one, it feels like it's more like a real city, like the people living in this terrible place also celebrate Christmas.
Yeah, and there's a performative element to it all, and even the snow looks kind of fake, and no one
Yeah.
dresses like that when they're going out, just walking down the street. There's just a
Yeah.
lot of Christmas here, but I think it it really adds. I think Tim Burton is wise in how he uses Christmas. The snow. Christopher Nolan doesn't use the holiday elements or the snow or the environment. He doesn't foreground it or allow it to seep into what's being played out in front of us. Whereas Burton, it's like, oh, it's the characters are, the camera's positioned so that the tree is, you know, foregrounded or whatever, or
Yeah.
The zoom goes in, from a snowy window. It plays really well with the environment, or I'm sorry, the elements of the environment.
And it's better for it. It makes it more
So,
memorable.
yeah, I think so.
Well, let's talk
The
about
last
your
one?
last one before the afterthought. But yeah, the last one, 2046. Tell me
Yeah,
about
real
this.
quick. It's a hard one to describe, but have you heard of the filmmaker Wong Kar-wai?
Yeah, the name sounds familiar. I don't know if I can name something off my head, but I've heard it before.
He did a very popular, famous movie, excellent movie called In the Mood for Love. He did
Oh,
Chungking
okay.
Express, a couple of other, real famous among art house cinema fans. Hong
Yeah.
Kong,
Okay.
great. But his movies, his aesthetic is so dreamy and so he's a real stylist. If you've seen the movie Moonlight, that's a real clear example of, I think, influence and what film can do to set a mood in terms of style, colors. And you probably have seen, if you we talk about beautiful movies, it's just all of his movies are just like you salivate when you watch them because they make you swoon, and they're
Yeah.
romantic and they're moody and they're about love and passion and loss and malaise, and it's all characters kind of haunted by the past and memory. And 2046, in short, is a more or less a sequel to In the Mood for Love. You don't really need to watch In the Mood for Love, but it's
Okay.
darker, it's sadder, but it's essentially about a man and his affairs after he loses the love of his life, or the one affair that mattered to him. I'm doing a terrible job explaining it, but it takes place in the 60s in Hong Kong, and it's essentially this writer and his romantic and sexual relationships and losses, and all the while haunted by them. And Christmas is the movie takes place over different periods, but Christmas is used as a signpost throughout the movie. So whenever it frames the movie, it comes up at poignant moments, it compares timeline points. It's one scene is Christmas 67, and the next scene it's Christmas 68. So it allows you to move through time because Christmas is this annual, red flag on our calendar. So
Yeah.
with a story so predicated on memory and time, and the title 2046 is the room that he used to have an affair in, and In the Mood for Love, when he really fell in love. And in this movie, it's him writing a book about a man traveling to the year 2046. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
there are all these, thematic, symbolic, real layers throughout the story, but it's just beautiful. It's moody. There's Nat King Cole's Christmas music in it. It's got rhythm. It's got heartbreak. It's cool as hell. And for me, it's like you can play it and you're going to see the Christmas color palettes. You're going to hear, 60s martini style Christmas songs. It's a real, feast for the senses.
Yeah, to your point, a little more complex than just a regular Hallmark or ABC Christmas movie.
Very complicated. But if you like art cinema, and Wong Kar-wai is just one of those masters. And he's done so many excellent movies. This is one of them that is one of his best, and it's a pretty hard Christmas movie.
Yeah,
the movie I
46.
replaced this with at the last minute because I wanted to include The Family Stone, which I just love. I think it's just so light, and it uses the conventions of Christmas movies so well. Don't you think? Have you seen it?
I love that movie. I mean, it's going to be on. It's one that I love. It's going to be on some of my other friends' lists. I know one other person I'm doing another episode with. It's on his list. Might be number one.
It's great. No, I think it's just, I don't know if it's a generational thing, but when I saw it, it was like my family, we all enjoyed watching it. Like it wasn't too inappropriate. It balances, those tear-jerking moments with slapstick comedy. I think it's a pretty graceful dance. Cast is lovely. Diane Keaton's amazing, you know?
It is, and it's got such good moments where it could feel forced in other settings, but instead you kind of care about the characters so early. It's just emotional and
I
it's
believe
real and it's
them
fun.
all of them.
Yeah.
Amy McAdams, like even Sarah Jessica Parker. And I'm not a Sex and the City fan, and
Yeah.
I don't really care about her career that much, but I think she's just perfect for the role. And I just think it's romantic, it's sad, it's confined to that Christmas holiday reunion, family reunion. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, there's something about home for the holidays in whatever form it takes that's just it's familiar and comfy, but also you want to see what goes wrong. You know, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
wondering where the first, what's going to break, what glass
Oh,
is
it's
going to
part
fall
of the
down
fun. It's
first.
why we love Christmas Vacation and A Christmas Story. You know, you're like, oh God, don't do that. It's gonna ruin the dining room. Oh, the
Yep.
tree's gonna catch on fire. There's so much whimsy and playfulness in the holidays anyway, and these movies just do a nice job of creating cinematic delights out of them.
And it's perfect that we get to do it at least once a year, right? I'm not one of those Christmas in July people just yet, but it's fun being able to sit down, a little hot chocolate or something and nuzzle into a movie you love. And for you, it sounds like there's some heavier tones, but more artistic and still Christmas, just not exactly the same Christmas maybe everybody else watches, but
Oh, and believe me, I
always
watch
fun to
those other
revisit.
ones too.
Of
I
course.
watch them all.
What are you looking forward to watching, this week or when you head home for Christmas?
You know, I'm halfway through Home Alone 2, and I'm really excited
Oh,
to finish
perfect.
it. I just love Home Alone 2. It's inferior to Home Alone 1, but the New York, the soundtrack,
The former
rest of it.
president, right?
Donald Trump cameo. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Shouldn't be so excited, but I am.
Yeah,
So, yeah, no, it's a great one.
that's
What are you
great.
looking forward to watch?
I just watched the Benedict Cumberbatch Grinch last night, and honestly, it was great. I
Oh,
didn't expect
yeah.
it to be good. I was like, okay, it
I
was
actually
fun.
like it more than the Jim Carrey one, if I'm honest.
Same here. I hope some of the listeners don't get mad. I know one of them who's a huge Jim Carrey Grinch. It's good, but it was like a good follow up from the original cartoon, which was fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's nice to see, these Christmas myths, these familiar stories kind of reinvented with different generations and different
Yeah,
of
different.
talent. So
And a little different lens to look at it.
exactly.
I know I just watched The Holiday the other day, and I still love it for all it is.
I
The one
need
that
to
I
rewatch it. I want to love The Holiday, and it's kind of like Love Actually for me. I hate Love Actually. The Holiday is fine. It just
Yeah.
I don't know. So I got to rewatch it. I got to try it again.
It's one that I hated years ago. I was like, this is so dumb.
Okay.
Just like
Then
Valentine's Day, just like he's just not that into you. It's one of those ones I just couldn't stand watching. I watched it with different eyes a few years ago and was like, wait, maybe I relate more to it being in LA or having my own, a little more dating history, whatever else.
See that makes me. I'm going to take a page out of your book because I think that could be how I approach it.
It's one to revisit, and I'm with you on hating Love Actually. So if someone challenged me, they're like, now you got to go watch that again. I'm dragging my feet, but that might be this week. We'll see.
So I did it one Christmas a couple years ago. I was home and I was with my sisters. We were debating about Christmas movies to watch, and I was like, "Should we try Love Actually?" And they're like, "Yeah, I remember seeing it, and not really liking it." I was like, "Yeah, but everyone does with it." And we all sit down, and we have very different tastes in movies. Like I can't get them to watch any of my avant-garde crap. And we all just like halfway through it, we're like, "This is really bad. We turn this off," and we couldn't do it. So that's not to sour your experience, but just know that it's not all unanimous.
I was on a soapbox with a friend because he was like, I love that movie. And I'm like, oh, stop. the affairs, Alan Rickman's storyline's weird. Even just getting to the cards, I know it's just so beloved by so many people, but I don't think it's me. I tried watching it when I was in London. My university was screening it at their little theater, and I made it maybe 20 minutes and I left. So
Yeah.
we'll see. It might just be a little torturous and I'll have to turn it off again, but
No,
I always got to try.
You got to try. You got to try. It's always a pleasure chatting with you, and I'm excited to do it again.
Yeah, we'll do it again soon, and have a good rest of your week. And if I don't see you, happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. May your days be merry and bright.